Now the client explosion has occurred. It was kind of like, hey, if you build it, they will come. So all these servers were built, and then Google and Microsoft and others said, we should really integrate some client-side technology in things like what? VS Code, a new command line interface from Gemini, from Google, Claude Desktop, Cursor, on and on. All these clients started to emerge.
Somewhere, cooking in a high humidity, very high heat shed in the hills of a place called Kentucky sits my co-host Yvonne. But unlike MCP's JSON RPC protocol, Yvonne speaks in perfectly understandable human language most of the time.
That's debatable.
How's it going, Yvonne?
It's great. I am 2 days away from a couples trip that's coming up for me and my husband next week. So we are super excited to be getting out of town. We are post my daughter's wedding. And so we decided that we needed a little couples getaway to recover. So cannot wait. Counting down the hours at this point.
Well deserved. Happy to hear that.
Yeah.
And so back in April, I think it was April, we recorded an episode diving into MCP, Model Context Protocol, with none other than John Capobianco, who is a incredible author, AI evangelist, content creator, and just kind of an all-around great person. And today we welcome John back to the show. How are things going, John?
Well, I'm glad it's not a retrospective on a vaporware technology that didn't go anywhere, and we're kind of saying we wish it had taken off. I did rewatch the previous episode, and I encourage people to watch it because 3 months ago, I give full credit to both hosts here, to Yvonne and William, that they had the courage to have me on to talk about some MCP work, and that was only, let's call it 4 months after the protocol was released. I had started to do some early work with it. As you can see, we're talking about how good I'm doing. I have a new Wu-Tang shirt. My wife surprised me with tickets for their final tour, and we had incredible seats, and I interacted with no less than 3 of them, giving them peace signs and stuff. It was a lot of fun. So I'm doing great. I really am doing fantastic. This, we maybe think about ripples and maybe, like AI itself, let's call it ChatGPT in November 2022. Probably was the biggest boulder dropped into the ocean that left the biggest ripples, right? But I feel like there's some aftershocks now, when it comes up and it leaves more ripples. Model Context Protocol has made a really significant difference in the way people are working, I would say, at a really high level. Let's forget about networking or automation or any of that. I think it really has actually changed the way people think about things. I would propose that from 2001 to 2024 was the era of the REST API and connecting data to data and humans to data, typically with JSON. But before that, there was XML, right, in a previous attempt called SOAP. But we don't talk about that much.
I used that back in the day.
Now using Model Context Protocol to connect intelligence. We're not just connecting data now. We're connecting true intelligence, data through a lens of artificial intelligence filtering or proxied through an AI, augmenting that base JSON payload or whatever payload a REST API used to provide. It's also not limited to REST APIs. It could be a simple Python script that you abstract as a tool. Could be an SQL query. Could be almost anything you could think of can be decorated as an MCP tool that you expose through a server. So I'm really excited about the follow-up episode and to see what both of your thoughts are, to see where the community's going. I have some personal announcements. We're going to look at some of this live, as well as some professional developments. I know William at Selector, or at Itential, and me at Selector, both of our organizations, were basically the first infrastructure organizations to release commercial enterprise-grade MCPs. I'm really proud of my development team's ability to make a streaming OAuth 2 secured remote MCP that literally is your selector URL /MCP. It is really a remarkable shift and a whole new way for our customers who have been clamoring for this to interface with our platform,
Yeah, you say clamoring, and I didn't think so when we first had you on the first time, and one thing, I didn't go back and listen to the last episode, but I did skim through some of the notes that I had, and I know Yvonne's got probably a better memory than I do at the moment, but one thing that I would love to just think about is like, that wasn't that long ago. Like we're midway through August. It hasn't been that long, but so much has changed. Like even like at the time, Anthropic, brought MCP to market. But since then, you have the likes of like OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, AWS. Literally everyone has adopted it, standardized on it. To the point, I think like even like Sam Altman's like on the steering committee, which is kind of funny. But like thinking of like the major changes that have happened since then, like what's happened? Do you think?
Well, I would agree with you. So I've always looked at the major hyperscalers, the major influential FANG, it used to be known as, like those industries and companies like Google and Microsoft, in my opinion, are like Steven Spielberg. And when they get behind something and release something or fund something or produce something, it is of high quality and something you can't miss. It is the new summer blockbuster, right? So when I see these companies, let's just pick AWS, right? They have a knowledge-based MCP, one of many. They have many MCPs. Azure has a similar thing. Google has a similar thing. So all of these companies have literally democratized their knowledge bases as MCPs. And if this is sounding over your head and it sounds confusing or hard, it's the simplest thing to do probably in the history of technology. They call it the USB-C of software. So I have my MCP client, just like an Outlook client or an email client or a browser for a web client. I have an MCP client. I'm going to focus on Gemini CLI today because I love it. It's remarkable. I plug in the knowledge base MCPs from those cloud providers, and now I can literally just ask questions and say, here's the cloud environment I'd like to build. It's multi-cloud. Can you check with GCP, Azure, AWS for the services they offer? Here's what I'd like to, here's what I envision for my infrastructure, and go ahead and do that, right? Within a few minutes, you have a full outline of each of the clouds, all the things they can do, how they can interact with each other from their actual knowledge base. I'm not talking about hallucinations here. We're well beyond that, right? So that to me, that's just off the top of my head, a radical example just on how to consume documentation, right? You're not clicking and following links and doing this and bookmark that, and that is over, right?
And I was having a conversation with a peer of mine about some vibe coding projects. And I think what we're seeing also is just a maturing of the processes to do that, right? Because one of the things we were discussing is that instead of just sitting down and talking about, hey, I want to build this thing, you start with, I want to build a design document that describes this thing. And then you have AI build the design document, and then you have it build an architecture based on the design document, and then you have it build the code based on those things, and you get with a more holistic solution that's more manageable long term. And I think that we weren't at that level the last time we spoke. And so I think there's so much maturing going on every day in the marketplace around all AI technologies, to help people really understand how to make it useful. I mean, it's one thing to have it do cool parlor tricks. It's another thing to be able to integrate it into something meaningful. And I think every day we are seeing advancements there. And it's super exciting.
Yeah.
Well, you built an app, Yvonne, the plant tracking app. Yvonne built a plant tracking app that's cloud native. For those that don't know, Yvonne is she basically a greenhouse practitioner.
Horticulturalist.
my middle-aged lady hobby is now growing house plants. I propagate them, I keep them. And so what I did is I literally vibe coded an app to help me track my plants. And not only did I vibe code it, but I used all the Google tools to do it, and it deployed to Cloud Run infrastructure. I didn't have to do anything. It built the app and deployed it and updated it, and now I can continue to manage it, right? And I'm going to integrate QR codes so I can print out a little barcode and stick it on my plant. That way I can scan, just fun things like that.
So you just said the word fun, and I was about to ask. So the whole experience was fun for one, right? And enjoyable.
Yeah.
You probably learned some code and some, obviously some technologies, and it is a whole, so I don't know. I had a great conversation with Scott Robon, and he equates vibe coding to just sophisticated prototyping. Right? Like, you might not sell that app, Yvonne, right? That might not be a production grade thing, but for your purposes and for what you needed to do, it was totally suitable and 100% fine, right?
And it gets me exactly what I want.
Exactly what I want.
Exactly what I want. And so we are entering an era now where we are, democratizing software development so that it's no longer, I'm going to have a software package that looks exactly like what millions of other people use. I may have a foundation or a framework that a lot of us use, but then we go in and we customize it based on our exact needs. And ultimately, the tools are going to integrate enough with GitHub, with our IDEs, with all of that, so that we can maintain it long term. And I think we're just at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But I think the people that are coming of career age in the next decade are going to find even newer ways and more unique and creative ways, because they don't have these old mental models that the rest of us have about how things ought to be done.
Well, what's interesting is 3 months ago when we had our first discussion, I can remember. So I had the server side of PyETS running. A PyETS. So for anyone who doesn't know, Cisco PyETS network automation Python toolkit. I had written an MCP for it that exposes, call it 8 tools, and they're very powerful. It's a wonderful way to run and operate your network, is just through VibeOps, just chatting with it, right? But at that time, I had to write the client for it. Like, I had to offer a separate repository that's, okay, here's a client for this server that I had written. 3 months later, now the client explosion has occurred. It was kind of like, if you build it, they will come. So all these servers were built, and then Google and Microsoft and others said, we should really integrate some client-side technology in things like what? VS Code, a new command line interface from Gemini, from Google, Claude Desktop, Cursor, on and on. All these clients started to emerge. So now it truly is here. It was kind of like doing file transfers from a command line before queued FTP in the 90s. Like, you used to have to know the actual CLI to do a file transfer over FTP. And then they came out with GUI, easy, frictionless point and click, drag and drop file transfer protocol clients. It's a remarkable period to be in. William, you got a lot to say. I can see you've been chewing on it.
So so many things you just said that it was kind of funny. Like, first of all, I still use the command line with FTP and SCP. I would never use any of the GUIs because it was just quicker and I could script my stuff. So it's just flashbacks. Kind of funny, but you all hit on so many neat points there. Like, it's fun to do. You're learning. And what you said a second ago too about the prototyping, that's such a valuable thing, because if you think of these high velocity startups, you have these product teams that are they have to do so much and they don't have a ton of time. They're working a ton of hours. They have to prototype new features. And, you can take this kind of technology, put it in a sandbox environment, separate it from, where all the crown jewels are, and really play around with okay, is this idea that we want to do? What are our options? Well, let's build them out and let's test them. You can test these different scenarios so much quicker. And then I got to, think about like, okay, these are all neat things, but what does it mean for adoption? And I looked up a number right before my computer crashed when we were joining this call to record, and I was just looking at some of the financials, and the market projections show 10.3 billion by end of 2025, and that's not just adoption. It's like this is an entire economy being built, and to kind of break it down a little bit further, and honestly, like I was thinking about too, and I'd love to get both of your opinions on this, because I just think it's interesting how fast and how big it happened. And when I went, in my mind, I go back to like when, OpenAI, I think it's like the OpenAI effect. So you saw, OpenAI adopting in MPC, I think in March-ish, somewhere February, March, and like I said, Sam Altman joined the steering committee and so forth. And there is like a domino effect. And in my mind, it kind of gave all these big companies a choice: either adopt MCP or risk possibly being left behind, possibly being incompatible with, say, like OpenAI or ChatGPT's ecosystem. It was almost like FOMO on a massive scale. I think that was maybe part of it. But then if you look at the launch, like when MCP launched, I mean, you know this better than me, but I'd imagine like maybe less than 100 MCP servers, maybe less than 50, probably not that many. And now, and another thing I looked up before the call was like, there's like 5,000 strong today.
Oh, if you go to mcp.so, it actually gives you the number, and it was north of 16,000 last time I was here.
Well, and one of my most popular like Google reshares was how to deploy an MCP server on Cloud Run, right?
Awesome.
So we're now seeing, cloud providers say, okay, if you want to deploy an MCP server, here's the easiest way to do that on our platform, right?
Right.
And so, that is an indication that there's incredible interest there when your hyperscalers start publishing tools on how to deploy an MCP server on their platform.
Well, we talked a lot about this during our first conversation, the power of a protocol and why the internet works the way the internet works today because of, let's say, OSPF or BGP, and everyone agreed, okay, I need an AS number and I need certain things to participate in the World Wide Web, and I'm governed by protocols. And there was a time when, some scary things like if you buy a certain ISP provider, you can only visit certain web pages or consume certain services, right? That's not what emerged. What emerged was an open, very capitalistic. I mean, there's some socialism behind it as a theory, but really in practice, it turned out to be a very lucrative thing. Everyone agreeing to use BGP and OSPF and other standards around the world, right? As a hardware manufacturer, as a software maker, as a protocol maker, as a chip maker, a network interface card maker, right? All these things, all that economy was driven by protocols, right? And I don't want to keep hammering on that, but now, so I'm still very much in the networking community and networking space, and that's a tough nut to crack. I've been trying for 10 years to get people to adopt automation, and my new message is, forget everything from the past 20 years. Like, we're in literally a new era now. That was standard. Now we have automatic transmission, and it's through the format of MCP, right? And I have this terrible habit of writing a book about a technology and then finding out that you don't even need the book anymore. But with my PyETS MCP, you literally add the 4 lines of JSON to your MCP client, and you don't have to know anything about PyETS or networking. How is my router? How is my Wi-Fi? Can you add this loopback? Right? You just talk to the thing, right?
Yeah. And you brought up a very important point earlier. I don't know if we were recording at that point or not, but it's worth, I think, bringing up. Nothing in enterprise is ever actually real unless security's like, okay, we can do a thing. And that was, I think, the biggest update since the last time we talked until now is the OAuth 2.1 update. Do you want to talk about why that's important? I'd actually love to get both of your perspectives on that one.
Sure. So on the Packet Copilot, let's say the public community service that we're offering from Selector, right? It truly is just open. You just need the URL. But if I want to offer an enterprise grade MCP, particularly externally, but even internally within my org, you don't know what you could be exposing behind those tools. We talked about what the tools could have access to: databases, Python scripts, API calls. All that stuff needs RBAC and AAA. It always has, it always will. So now there's a new RFC that implements OAuth 2. So you need OAuth 2 to get through to the MCP tools. The MCP server is sitting there waiting to offer tools to you and act upon those tools and augment the LLM or the agent it's connected to. Now we have to have potentially a checkpoint, an off session, right?
When that elevates the technology, like William was saying, to the point where it can be subject to certain degree of security controls, and it allows you a ton more options. It's not just what you would want to expose publicly or what you would want to expose maybe behind even a firewall. We need some sort of identity, because in our modern world, there is really no such thing as on the network and off the network, or inside the network or outside the network anymore, right? Identity is your enforcement point, and your identity is your boundary. And so that's critical.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You got to have guardrails. You have to be like, the whole point of, hey, we can move fast. We want to move fast, but you need to move fast responsibly. And it gives you the ability to do that.
And it will also open the door to things like auditability, give you observability, give you more ability to report and track all that's going on inside that system. And all of those things are going to be super important to making an enterprise grade solution.
Yeah, the other thing I think that's going to add to this level of trust, clearly security, right? If that's not there, there's no trust to begin with. But major vendors like Cisco have quite literally rewritten and renamed their certification tracks. 20% of the CCNP automation track, 20% of that exam is artificial intelligence now, or in February when it gets released, including a single line topic that mentions fast MCP and using MCPs with an agent. Now there's a little hint there. It actually says fast MCP. I would start studying and learning that, right? Like, it's literally in the blueprint of the exam as words now. So as more people get certified, more people get more comfort, more people have upskilled themselves. But generally the industry is saying, listen, if Cisco's going to put this right in their certs, and if there's RFCs for security, and if Azure and Microsoft and Google and GitHub and all these other players are getting involved, and if upstarts like Selector and Itential have them, right, at some point there's got to be a tipping point where people accept and embrace and adopt this sort of stuff, right?
Yeah. And you need all these, folks out there that are trying to learn, they're trying to upskill, getting exposed to this earlier on, because kind of like you were talking about your MCP PyATS. And I remember, like, when I was, I think I looked at it and messed around with it a little bit, and it connects to it's like Slack, GitHub, like Netbox, ServiceNow, like all these different things. You have all these different things connecting, and you have the ability to do so very easy. And that's why you have to prioritize education and, thinking through these problems correctly. And not to mention, don't forget the foundational skills. You still need, I've had a few different episodes recently where we've talked about, like, hey, you can't just ignore, like, not learning anything. You still want to, if you want to be a network engineer, you pick that, trade and learn it. Learn network engineering, like learn how BGP works, learn distributed systems, CAP theorem, distributed design. Those are really important skills. Don't ignore them. But AI's here to even help you learn those quicker, more efficiently.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of so there's a lot of trust but verify involved, like this new packet thing I'm going to show you later. I'm not saying you shouldn't know how to double click the PCAP file and look at it in Wireshark and verify the information the LLM has summarized for you and say, yes, that is the source. Yes, that is the destination. It's kind of like I'm going to date myself, but Cliff Notes for books. Right now, I wouldn't write the exam and the paper I'm going to hand in to the professor just based on the Cliff Notes. Right? That's there to augment reading the book. Right? So, yes, you still need to know the OSI stack and MAC addresses and IP addresses. Unfortunately, you at this point in human history, that's still knowledge that we need to still have. Maybe GPT 8 or 9 in 7 or 8 years, or who knows what that will be able to do. Here's something I'd like to hear from both of you. Actually, it came up recently in the community. There's some people, and I get where they're coming from, and I'm not dismissing what they're saying. And I wasn't trying to be flippant in my response, but there's some people lamenting that maybe seniors are pulling the ladder up, or there's no place for juniors, or how are juniors going to get to seniors? How do we get the knowledge transfer? If everything's just agents and we're, displacing the juniors with agents, how do we replace the seniors over time? It's a whole ball of wax to unpack. A lot of philosophy, a lot of social, just societal impacts here. But I sort of think that those are kind of pre-agent constructs. This idea of junior and senior, like, titles change and things come and go in the workplace. So-called junior, like it's based on experience and salary and title. I don't know. I think a junior could come in who knows how to extract information through natural language with a model. If that organization has transferred their institutional knowledge into that model, as well as domain-specific knowledge and all the other things that you're needed, juniors don't have to page the senior, escalate through emails, try to get time. They can just chat with the LLM, right? Similarly, seniors don't have to necessarily grind it out with a junior and explain to them and do half the work themselves. They can use agents for this. I'm just wondering, like, what do you think about just what happens to that paradigm in an HR flow or an org chart or whatever, right?
You want me to go first, Yvonne, or you want to go first?
Yeah, we even had a private conversation earlier this week where we talked about some of these topics. So go ahead, and then I'll chime in.
My heart wants to tell me that, like, the easier the work, the more AI is going to be there to take on that work. Because I feel like organizations are going to want to cut. You always want to cut costs and do more with less always. But I think it's part of a bigger problem as well, where when I started working in technology, I had to go into the office every day. Everybody that worked in tech in my city, there was no work from home. Like VPNs were like kind of rare. You had to go in. So that means that the organizations around where you lived, their talent pool was that place, unless you wanted to relocate. Now, I feel like there is such a huge, so many young folks went to college for comp sci. They wanted to become software engineers. There are so many software engineers saturating the market right now. And then I see this thing of like, oh, there's not enough software engineers. But then, like, I feel like when you dig down into that, it's not the right software engineers, because you want the high skilled rock stars of the trade. So it's kind of left, I think it's a supply and demand problem, maybe even more than it's an AI problem. But I do think AI, I think it's a science experiment in a sense, to where anybody that says they know what's going to happen over the next 5 years, maybe somebody's right. I have my thoughts, and my thoughts is, and I like the distinction you made about the junior and senior. That is just kind of like an old, it's like almost like support. You have level 1 support, level 2 support, level 3 support. It was always so, it has to be that way. And a lot of organizations have actually flattened out over the years, like the high velocity ones. So yeah, it's a mixed bag, but I do think there is going to be some impact on less skilled people being able to get jobs, but I don't know how much of it has to do with what at this point. Because again, I talked to software engineers that are like looking for jobs. They went to college, and It's just like somebody was complaining to me. They sent me this LinkedIn job, and it had been posted, and within like 48 hours, it had like 700 applicants. And when you think about like your chances, you just don't have a good chance of even getting an interview. I mean, no matter what your resume looks like. So I don't know.
I think we're in the middle of a huge transitional period, and so I think things on the other side are going to look radically different than what they looked like in the past. I think that's a reality. I do think like the bar for what it is to be an the responsibilities or the things that an entry level person can accomplish are going to change, because I think the tools are going to change that. And so yeah, I just don't know how that's going to shake out and what that's going to look like. What I would say though is that the folks who got into the job market 20 years ago, I don't know how instructive our experience will be to young people that want to get in the job market today. Like I think that's going to be different, and it's going to require some creativity and a different kind of drive. You know, like it for a lot of us, you get your foot in the door and you work really hard and you just show up day after day and you keep grinding at it, and eventually,
right.
Eventually 10, 20 years down the road, you have this great body of work and you've done things and you've had the experience. And now all of a sudden people are like, oh, how did you get there? And I'm like, I kept showing up to work every day. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Right. I think like many things, like, you know, influencer marketing, like what we like, the world's different. And so I think the challenge that I have is like, I don't know how to give a new and career person a roadmap, because I think the road is different. Right. But we still don't have a 2 or 3 hour work week with all of the gains and efficiency that we've seen in the last 100 years. Right. Like, I don't think we're ever going to have a 2 or 3 day work.
Right.
You know, I think it will ultimately shake out, but I do think it might be rocky for the next little bit.
Some of us would enjoy a 40-hour work week.
Well, hey, let's. Do you want to see something now?
Share. Yes, we got to
screen. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so this is why I'm chewing on these kind of thoughts about digital coworkers and digital colleagues, and I'm going to present my screen here, entire screen.
And make sure to tee up what Gemini CLI you're going to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have tabs. So June 25th of this year, Gemini CLI is released. It literally is just a command line interface. How do you get?
You could move my window there. I see myself on the, skip that.
How do I do this? Let me minimize this. Is that better?
There we go. Perfect.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, everyone, for the telescope. So how do I do this? Well, I go to the GitHub repository. I don't even have to git clone it. You literally run npx and this command, or npm and this command, or you can even use homebrew and brew install it. Okay, so what does that look like? It looks like this in Ubuntu. If I cd into a packet analysis folder, I have some pcap files. I'm going to do Gemini --YOLO, meaning YOLO mode, don't prompt me to run MCP tools. And you can toggle YOLO mode with Control Y, and I can view my MCP server details with Control T. I can also just do /MCP for a concatenated version, and I have the Packet Copilot MCP installed. Now that's very easy to do, and I'll show you before I use it. If I just do cd, actually, if I cat out .gemini settings.json, you can see here that all I've done is added MCP servers to my JSON file. Okay. So then I can do Gemini --YOLO. And right from the command line interface here, I can say, can you help me understand the capture.pcap file? Let's say L2, L3, L4 info. using the Packet Copilot. Is everyone still with me? You can still see everything?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, we can see. So just to summarize, you installed the Gemini CLI tool, which really turns your CLI into a place where you can prompt and interact with your command line via LLM with Gemini.
Yes,
and so now,
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, and the key being I can plug in one or all of those 16,000 MCP servers to completely enhance, augment, extend, however you want to look at it, this base Gemini CLI.
Just don't do them all.
Provide a set of tools and intelligence to your CLI so that you can do interesting things like analyze a packet capture in natural language.
Yeah.
One thing
exactly.
too, so if somebody wanted to follow along and do this, like they just have to clone your repo down to their machine and install Gemini and have Gemini subscription.
Yeah, they
right?
just need a Gemini. And even if you don't have a Gemini subscription, there's a free mode with X number of prompts per day until you get a Gemini key. The other thing is this is very enterprise friendly. As you can see, there's a lot of people moving towards Google Cloud and Google in general for things like their LLMs. So this LLM I'm using is private and secure with Selector, my organization's, LLM of choice. So here is the full thing, right? They analyze PCAP in the time we've talked. Now I can say, can you put this into capture.md as a nice markdown report, right? And I'm just we're just touching. This is the tip of the iceberg. Just wait for more. I thought it would just use the history and make the markdown file. Okay, well we'll let this finish. Actually, we've seen enough of this. I think you get the idea here. So what is really cool is that Gemini just released on August 6th, and we're only the 14th. AI coding teammate Gemini CLI incorporated into GitHub Actions. William, Yvonne, are you either of you used or familiar with GitHub Actions?
Far too much.
Okay. So here is how to do it. Literally say /setup GitHub inside of Gemini, or you can add these pre-built workflows in manually, and they give you 3 of them. And we're going to watch 2 of them in action. Now, this is the selector. This is how people used to use Selector Packet Copilot, upload a PCAP and chat with it through a web interface. Well, this is the /MCP version. Now, this looks like an error, and it is only because my web browser doesn't support text streaming events, but that's fine. It's just a health check. Now, okay, watch this. Okay, so this is my Get Packet Copilot repo. And what I've done is I've created a Packet Copilot workflow, a GitHub action, that is actually going to, let me find the line here, is actually going to use the Gemini CLI. But not just the Gemini CLI, the Gemini CLI with my Packet Copilot MCP. Now, to the best of my understanding, is this is spinning up an actual Ubuntu image in GitHub's infrastructure in the cloud, cloning my repo, installing Gemini, installing my MCP settings, and then using Gemini to do the thing. Are you ready for this? Okay, so let me go find a PCAP that I haven't uploaded yet. Do I have any IGRP PCAP?
This is great, by the way. I love it.
Okay, let's do the Slammer Worm PCAP. Okay, let me copy this file. Can I do that? And let me go into that folder. Okay, so I've copied the Slammer Worm PCAP, and I'm going to delete the zone identifier. Okay, so now all I'm literally going to do is say Slammer, possible Slammer attack as my commit message. Commit, save, and now a couple of places I want to show you. Under Actions, so first of all, back here, you can see there's the new Slammer PCAP file, right? And if I go to Actions and refresh,
I wonder if it wants you to like do a pull request or some sort of commit to trigger.
Hang on, no, that should have done that. Why did it not trigger? Of course, right, live and in action, it didn't work. Let me try that again. I'm in the right repo here, yeah. So let me just try that again. I'm sorry, everyone. Okay, it's funny that triggered the workflow. Okay, so let me just try that again. Let me try that again. So if I refresh here, that file should be gone. Save the packet.
It's because you're using Windows, John. It's the year of the Linux desktop. This would have never happened if you were using Linux.
Well, I am sort of using Linux through WSL. Let me try this. Possible slammer attack. I don't know why that didn't work. Commit save. And okay, here we go. This is what should have happened. Possible slammer attack. And it's going to detect the PCAP and move on to the analyze PCAP. Now, we have to be a little patient. It does take about 2.5 minutes, 2:45, but we can really break all this down. So you can actually see here all of the logging it gives me, everything it needs to do here. And this first one finds that there's a new PCAP. The next one is going to, so here there's just a health check. There's the MCP server integration. It's going to now install Gemini and run it in one-shot mode with a prompt. And that's a pre-cam prompt with the base 64 version of the PCAP. This previous step turned the PCAP into base 64. So now we literally just have to be patient. But watch this. Did you know there's a GitHub Actions extension for VS Code? And you can actually see if I refresh this, workflows, you can see that my packet analyzer is running here and it's onto the detect PCAP step. Is that not the coolest thing ever?
I learned something new every day. I didn't know that there was a extension in VS Code to track your pipeline like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's even, my current branch. Now, I have had trouble. So these actually take you out to the cloud. It's funny. I don't want to be a spoiled brat, but when I go to Git description and I click on the link, it takes me up to GitHub. I would love for that to be right in the main window of VS Code, show me the text on what's going on, but it will take you to that stop, that place. So we're getting very close here.
Okay, one of the beauties of this is it's ephemeral. So you're running this and it's bringing the whole thing up from scratch and then tearing it down once you have your results. It's like not a long-lived piece of infrastructure out there just sitting.
Right.
Taking it.
Yeah, that's a really
you're not
good
maintaining or patching or having to pay to run this infrastructure, do this analysis all the time, when you can integrate it with a GitHub action, fire it up when you need it, tear it all down, and then have the analysis that you need.
That is really insightful, both of you. Honestly, I had not looked at it that way. As someone who spends quite a bit of money on cloud resources, that is very insightful. The other thing is, so this is just the how the sausage is made, but we've already analyzed the PCAP. Now we're generating the markdown report, and you can see, of course, here's the detailed analysis, right? And now the rest of this makes the markdown file and everything. So check this out. If we go back to code and go into reports and go into Slammer, there is the report. And it did find that it's highly indicative of the SQL Slammer worm and the reasons why, the port numbers and the various problems it sees in this packet capture. Okay, you with me so far? I want to show you something else that we can do in GitHub now with the Gemini.
Oh, I'm with you. All right. This is pretty awesome.
So see how I don't like this appendix. let's say, Yvonne, you don't like this appendix. So what are you going to do? You're open up a GitHub issue on GitHub, right? So let me go back and get that file name. Sorry, this will help. There is a little bit of help that it needs. And I'm just going to get the file name. This is really going to be awesome. So I'm going to open up a new issue and say, issue, this lacks a sufficient appendix. Could you please add a decent appendix, maybe with a table to the document? Create. Now, okay, I have a triage bot. Sorry, I got to go back there. A triage bot that's going to run as an action. So you can see here, it's triaging it. Triage issue. How many GitHub repositories do either of you have? How many issues do you have people opening on your repos on weekends that you've just got to deal with as a maintainer, or people listening at home? So what's going to happen is we're just going to watch this. In a second or two, is auto triaging and labeling this issue for me. And you can see that it's using the Gemini and the steps. And in just a second here, we should get an automatic triage. And I hope we're not running too late, everyone.
I'm good on time.
We're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So check it out. Boom. This is a documentation and it's an enhancement request. Let's
So
not
labeled
stop.
and everything.
Yeah. And if you had multiple team members, my understanding is it will assign the issue based on their coding profile on GitHub.
Wow.
Now check this out. Me as John, the lazy guy, says at Gemini CLI, can you please handle this enhancement request for me? Right? Can you believe this? So check it out. If I go back to my workflows, or my actions, excuse me, here is, no, hang on. Where did it go? Right here. So this is a different workflow, the Gemini CLI. I should rename this. This is a beginner. I should rename it to say something like, issue comment responder or whatever. And this will take, a few seconds. I need everyone to just be patient. But what this is going to do is just deal with that issue. So check it out. Could you please add a decent index? Can you please handle this for me? Sure, I've received your request and I'm working on it now with the little robot. Now, in a second, it should lay out its plan on what it's going to do in a little markdown table for me. Or at least I've seen it do that. Yeah, this stupid thing. Okay, I can't fix this now. It's something that I'm going to have to try again. Google, if you're watching, hey, occasionally I get this command substitution thing, and I've tried a few different ways to get around it. What the best thing for me to do is to just try it again. Gemini-CLI, can you deal with this for me? And we'll just try it again. It doesn't take that long. But anyway, I have been trying to deal with this error, and it seems to be, it's an intermittent thing. It doesn't happen all the time, but something at the shell, when I run shell command, is trying to do some command substitution, and that's not allowed for security issues. But that's okay. We can watch the next one go. Any comments while we're watching? I'd like to hear both of your thoughts on all this.
I just think go ahead.
Well, what you just showed us basically is an integration that will triage incoming comments and requests, will help categorize them. And then the way your workflow is built, then you can go in and request that the AI do the task for you, in this case, in this documentation. And so you've basically created this mini bot inside of with your GitHub Actions to help you keep your documentation updated based on requests from folks into your into your repository.
Yeah, exactly. And my understanding is, like, you could ask at Gemini as an issue, and say, could you help me understand this particular file in this repository? And it will analyze it and give that user back an answer automatically. So it's almost, I hate to use the word secretary. I don't know what a better word is other than assistant or co-pilot. I'm trying not to be redundant with the terminology, but it really just handles GitHub for me. Handles comments, it handles issues, it triages things. So what's happening here? Probably got the same. Yeah, you see, it's getting closer. So this time it did make the table, the plan, but something has tripped up the report issue, and I do apologize for that.
You don't even have to, like, you're showing it in brevity just because we're doing like a demo, but like if you think about like just all the something, like say you have like a fork and pull sort of strategy and you're managing like an open source project, which means you're going to fork, add the upstream, but you're going to commit like features and changes to like your branch that like you forked. And there's all this stuff that has to happen. And if you think like in a bigger context, you can prompt this essentially to say, hey, my preferred method of doing this is fork and pull. This is my upstream. This is my fork. This is how I want you to manage the whole Git flow. Like every little component, when you think of all these little components that take up just not like a ton of time, but some time, but you add them all together, it is a ton of time. And then you could say, hey, here's a template for my pull request. This is what has to be filled in. Here's some, find and replace, in brackets, and put this here and this there and this there. And next thing you know, I mean, it's like hands-free. You're self-driving with this thing.
I do like your idea of a template and an instruction set that says, if I receive a pull request, here's the structure I want you to regardless of what the people put in their pull request, restructure it using the AI, the generative AI, in my preferred format of how I want to receive a pull request.
Keep it neat. Yeah, I love that.
So I just love the idea of and how to do this. Maybe one thing I should share to people, because it really is easy here. Let me just share one more time.
And John painted that, by the way. I think I've asked you that like 10 times. That is such cool.
I did. So if you want it, so find a random repository, right? This Git Packet Copilot is the one we've been working on. You're going to go to settings. You're going to go to secrets and variables, actions, add literally Gemini API key in your Gemini API key. And now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to want to make these workflow files. These two I literally took from Google. They give you some great starters. This one I vibe coded using one of the others as a template. That's it. That's it. And now your GitHub repository has become, let's just say it, artificially intelligent, right?
Think of like backlog grooming. Like if you, like, I don't spend that much time in Jira.
William can't stay. He's spinning. I've blown William's broken. I've broken William.
Imagine how crowded and how cluttered Jira can get. How much stuff you have. Like imagine cleaning up Jira through a project like this. It's like incredible. Sky's the limit. Build a plant app in your house. Save yourself a ton of time in your day-to-day work, and then all the new ideas that you want to prototype and you want to see, hey, is this possible, or am I just, thinking nonsense? It's incredible time to work in technology.
Well, I use the packet capture as an example, right? And it is fun and it is useful. I think it's great. But in my previous life at Parliament, we really did have a CI/CD pipeline in Azure DevOps. And I see this and go, right there, right there, right there. All these steps in my pipeline. I would have loved to have AI build a write-up of every step in the CI/CD pipeline, pass or fail, statistics, counters, artifacts, whatever. The very end of this thing, send me a nice AI-augmented report. Not a CI/CD pipeline report. I'm talking about an actual report of your job with everything you'd ever want to know, right?
No, the PCAP's great because I was always terrible at PCAPs, looking through PCAPs. And you're always under pressure when you're required to look at them and figure something out. It's always like, the room's on fire. And like back to the earlier thing of like, oh, we need to learn the foundational skills and everything. Like my my exception to that was, becoming an expert at looking at like Wireshark captures is not easy.
You have to open the tool 3 times, 4 times a year, and when you do have to open it, you are in the real mess of things. You're not opening Wireshark and looking at PCAPs for fun. To be able just to drag and drop and get an analysis, and even if it's an initial analysis that's 90%, 85% of the way there, you've just saved yourself a huge amount of time, right? So,
and imagine the power of having a PCAP during normal conditions to compare against when it's hit the fan. Right. Can you analyze these 2 captures and tell me what's different between the 2?
Yeah. I'm going to try that.
Those
I'm going to
are
try to
things.
upload 2 PCAPs and see what happens. If I can maybe add some more logic to say, if there's more than one PCAP, assume they're linked in some way and analyze them as a pair. That would be fun.
Well, if you're doing that, you have multiple devices in the chain. F5s, you're spanning ports on network devices. You have multiple that you have to compare with. But yeah. But I know we took a lot of your time today, John.
No, you didn't.
We really appreciate it.
I really was excited to come back and revisit something that I feel we broke ground on a few months ago. We were the first to talk about it and evangelize it. All of us were optimistic about its potential, let's say 3 months ago. And now that potential realized, and I think we're even more invigorated and excited, given its kind of, blooming and blossoming into some fruit now, right? I'd love to come back in even more time and see where we're at. And if anyone out there needs help getting going, please just reach out to us. We are here and very helpful and open, friendly people. This is not as intimidating as you think. This is a different story than trying to tell someone, learn Python. That's a 2-year community college course, right? You don't have to necessarily worry about that anymore to start using these tools.
Super exciting. And it is great to start seeing more practical application. I think we've been saying, hey, this is neat. It's going to do some amazing things. It's really going to change how we work. And now we're starting to see enough practical application of that so we can truly demonstrate that. And John, you continue to forge the way and cut the path through the jungle of AI to help us kind of understand where to be looking next.
Well, thank you so much. It's I only do it as a member of the community. We're all in this together, right?
Love it. And I think I'll put all the places to find you in the show notes if you don't want to say them out loud, because you got a lot of places. And make sure to check John's YouTube channel, because his MCP content, especially even his new Gemini videos, they're top notch, straight to the point, no fluff. Get in and discard what you don't need. I love the style, John. Keep it up.
Thank
Good
you.
stuff.
All right, everyone. Well, so stay safe, and it's really nice to see you both again.